All right, give me 1 minute. Let me tell you a story. It's a life-changing story. It was life-changing for me. Very likely to be life-changing for you. By the way, I got LASIK, so I don't have my glasses. It's kind of cool. First time since I was 17 that I haven't needed glasses to drive. So the story. If you want to, let me tell you who should listen to this story. If you don't want to do what other people do, if you don't want to have an average life, listen to this story. If you don't want to have an average life, listen to this story. Like Thoreau said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. So most people in the world live in a life of confirmed desperation, okay? When I was 16, I realized life's basically impossible to live correctly. Everybody you meet, every adult you meet, life full of regrets. I don't care how old you are, people older than you look back at their life and say, I just want a do-over. But there's no do-overs in life. That's the problem. They say life's like a parachute jump. You only have one chance. You mess up the chance, there is no second chances. You hit the ground and you fail. And most people, they say 80% of people don't like the three most important things in their life. Their career, how they grew up, and who they're married to or who they're attached to. Friends, family, the social circle's not right. Income's not right. They don't like where they live. They don't like the routine. They don't like the 9-to-5 grind, like all this stuff. So I was 16. I realized that I was a little bit ahead of the game. And I started thinking, I was like, how can I not be like everybody else? Everybody else I see has the same regrets. They hate their job. They don't make enough money. They feel isolated. They're depressed. They're not traveling enough. They're not happy. They're not free. And so what dawned upon me was, why don't I just ask all the people that have way more experience what the solution is? But I bumped into a problem with that, because you can't ask people who didn't succeed how to succeed. Like if you want to know how to win at basketball or football, your best person to talk to is someone who won a championship. If you just ask the average person just because they're older doesn't mean they know anything. In fact, older can just mean cynical, and in a way you know less because you're not open to new ideas. So my first test didn't work. I just started asking people all the solutions to life, like what I should do for my career, how should I make money, and I was more confused than ever. So then I bumped into this mentor a little bit later, this guy named Alan Nation. He said, no, Ty, the secret in life is to ignore 99 out of 100 people, but when you find the one person who actually knows what they're talking about, like actually listen. So I was like, that makes sense. So the real secret is knowing who to fully ignore and knowing who to fully listen to. And the crazy thing is you might have to ignore like someone close to you, like your parents. Just because you're born to your parents, that's just fate, randomness, you could say, in a way. It doesn't mean you were born to the wisest people that can give you the best answers, especially when it comes to making money. Unlike I grew up, I remember, it's funny, in this story that I'm telling you, the story continues all the way to my life. Now, last month I had a guy at my house named Tillman Fertitta. He's a billionaire. He's worth $4.9 billion. The Forbes list just came out. He owns the Houston Rockets. He owns the Golden Nugget casinos. He owns 600 restaurants. And he has 60,000 employees. And I'm working on a big deal. I just bought a huge company. I bought a company that's doing $740 million in revenue. And I bought it after I talked to him. So last month I talked to him. This month I bought the company. And I asked him specific questions that only that guy could answer. The only person I know a handful of billionaires. I know a handful of people, not just billionaires, but people who have they've pulled off what everybody wants in life. They've got like the trifecta. They've got everything, you know. They call it triple threat. These people have it. I'm not saying they're perfect. You could dissect anybody's life and find stupid stuff. But this guy gave me insight that no college could give me, no university, no degree, none of my friends growing up, none of my family growing up. So I think back, I'm 16 years old. I'm totally lost. I start asking everybody. That doesn't work. I meet a mentor. He says, be more selective in who you listen to. 1 out of 100 rule, I call it. The 1 out of 100 rule. And really, I think the rule is more like 1 out of 100,000 or 1 out of 1,000,000. And this guy, Tillman Fertitta, this is just an example. Now, in my point in my life now, I know quite a few people like this. But there's not many of them in the world. And when I was young, the problem was I had access to nobody with answers. Nobody. And so I went through life and I stumbled here. And I'm looking back, all the things I'm doing now that I love about my life, not my life's not perfect, but all the things I do love, I could have done, I wasted 10 years. And I promise you this, if you're watching this, if you don't understand what I'm saying in this story, you will waste 10 years of your life. And you don't have to waste those 10 years. The only thing you can't get back is the years of your life. So you look at your life now, I promise you, you're behind, just like I was behind. And I'm still behind. But I now have a shortcut, a way of finding answers. So let's just say you hate your job. Let's just say you want to make more money. I remember the first time I figured out how to make $100,000 a year. Before I was making zero. I literally had less than $100 in my bank account. And I started listening to some people. I listened to this guy named Corey Rudel. Never even met him, but I bought books and he had this course. And he's like, here's how you make $100,000. And within 9 months, I made $100,000. I learned to use Google Ads, generate leads. I was working for GE Capital back then. And it worked. Like everybody else, I was looking around me going, what's going on? And I realized they weren't being selective in who they listened to. They were just listening to their mom, their dad, their uncle, their friend of friend. They're reading the magazine or newspaper, getting a little bit from Twitter and all that. Forget that. I became a hyper-focused listener. I became selective in who I listened to. At that point in my life, I just listened to Corey Rudel. I said, yo, let me just follow what this guy says. Let me not listen to 38,000 people and get all confused. One person. And I remember I paid like $500 and I got this 3-ring binder in the mails when I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina. Get this 3-ring binder. I start reading it. I was living in a mobile home at the time, believe it or not. Basically homeless because I didn't have a bed. I was sleeping on a couch. I couldn't afford rent before I got this Corey Rudel thing, and I had slowly saved up a little bit of money. I had this little job, saved up like $500, bought this guy's training, and he trained me, and it worked. Sadly, Corey Rudel, I never got to think of him in person. He died in a car accident in 2008. He made so much money, had all these Lambos and Porsches, and he crashed his Porsche into a cliff, actually, in La Jolla, California. Sad story, but he changed a lot of lives, including my life, and that's his legacy, and that's, most people don't even leave a legacy, so, but that wasn't, like, so then I knew how to make $100,000, but then I was like, man, life has more. I don't want to live an average life. I want to be growing. I want to be doing new things, and so, nightclub business. I was like, I want to get in the nightclub business, but once again, who do I listen to? Do I ask my friends? I didn't know. I grew up with a family, never met a millionaire. First time I met a millionaire. I never met a billionaire. Obviously growing up, never met a millionaire. I remember when I was about 17, 18 years old, I was still at home. Our church, I went to a church called Covenant Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, my parents went to. And these people, the Parasos, they made $1 million in our whole family and the whole church. And because I grew up like middle class when I was younger, like lower middle class or even more on the poor side. But my mom got remarried. My stepdad worked at the post office. Made $50,000 a year, so all of a sudden we're moving up, and then we met this family, the Parasos, that were millionaires. And I remember, but I was still like 17, so I never really learned anything from them. That was the first time I ever met a millionaire. And I got a little advice from them, believe it or not, but not much, because I hadn't really absorbed this way of selectively listening to people. So I then get a little bit older, start meeting sharp people, smart people, people who have the answer. Corey Rudel is one of them. Then I meet this guy, Giorgio Bataxias. He owns restaurants and nightclubs in Raleigh and Durham, North Carolina. So I went to him and I was like, hey, and he had this partner, Jay, Giorgio and Jay. I said, will you guys teach me? And they started teaching. I remember the first thing they taught me about a nightclub. Keep it, don't make it too big of a nightclub where it looks empty. They're like, close the doors, shut some walls off, make the thing feel like people like to feel like they're in a packed place. You don't want it too packed where it's like fire hazard, but that little tip, you'd be surprised how many people don't know that. I started learning selectively. I didn't ask anybody. I didn't ask my friends, my mom, nobody. I just selectively listened to a mentor. That's the whole point of this story, by the way. And then I created 2 sources of income. I was making 6 figures here and 6 figures here. It's like, put those two together. I was like, wow, I'm making more money than anybody in my family. My dad's from Harlem. You know, his dad worked in a Subway. I'm not from multi-generations of wealth. Not from the Rockefellers, the Rothschild, J.P. Morgan, none of that, you know. And so my dad was in prison when I was born. Nothing. But by selectively learning, boom, I began to skyrocket financially and just in life freedom and happiness past my friends, past people I went to high school, past people that I didn't go to college, but past people who went to college and I didn't go to college. And all of a sudden I'm going, man, there's something to this. And I follow that selective listening to the right people my whole life. But now I raised the ante. Like I said, last month I'm meeting, you know, those of you who watch my videos, you see Mark Cuban, you see people, Steve Ballmer, you know, Steve Ballmer's now worth $52 billion. I had dinner with him not too long ago. I had a long conversation about the direction of my life and business. This is a guy who's $52,000 million. He's worth listening to. Each conversation like that shapes and molds and changes my life. And so what I'm trying to say to you is, if you don't have that in your life, forget what anybody tells you. A lot of people that don't know what they're talking about say, no, you can just learn by doing. Well, yeah, you do learn by doing. That's true, but so like if you want to learn to play basketball, you learn by actually playing basketball. Yeah, but every basketball player in history had coaches they listened to. Everyone, Michael Jordan, LeBron James. I've become friends with quite a few. Chris Paul's a good buddy of mine. He has had coaches his whole life, you know.